Hello, welcome back. On stage next, we have a view from the top with franchise car dealer bosses. Being a franchise dealer brings with it its own set of challenges. And we're going to be joined on stage by 4 experts. We've got Will Blackshaw, dealer principal at Blackshaws, Mark Busby, commercial director at Hendy Group, Ken Savage, chairman of Perry's, and Dom Threlfall, managing director of Pebley Beach. Please give them a warm welcome on stage. Hi guys.
Hello. Welcome. Right, as before, if you've got any questions, please put your hands up. We will come to the audience and take your questions. A couple of my colleagues will grab you with a mic. But firstly, a couple from me. Will, do you think manufacturers' expectations are realistic of franchise dealers at the moment?
No. We've got 3 franchises. 2 I believe are very good, 1 I'm finding very challenging at the minute. I can kind of understand why and where manufacturers are wanting to go. You know, we're trying to sell very expensive products. We know after the house, the car's the next most expensive purchase. But I guess we're trying to benchmark ourselves against likes of John Lewis's and stuff, and we want this beautiful showrooms and all that sort of stuff. But I've never looked at John Lewis's lighting to see if they're the same in each store. If the place is light enough, surely that's adequate. So when a manufacturer is saying to us, you must have this lighting, you must have that lighting, does it really matter? And no, it doesn't. So yeah, it's making it very difficult. And for us as a small family business, you know, we've got limited budgets to work with. They're making us stock massive amount of new cars, and again, that has its problems, especially with the amount of choice and variance available. We cannot stock the right cars all the time. So again, it just puts massive pressure on us to the point where you're not sleeping at night. And at 32 years old, it's worrying that I'm not sleeping at nights. So things need to change, definitely. Some manufacturers, though, are fine and help us. So, yeah.
What about you, Mark? Because your biggest brand must be Ford.
Yeah, the biggest in terms of representation is Ford, yes.
And do you feel that their expectations are realistic, or any of the other manufacturers?
Ford specifically, or all of them?
Any of them.
Okay. I think all of them have reasonable methodology to support their expectations. Whether that flows through into reality only really shines through at the end of a given period. If you took Q1, you would say perhaps everyone was correct. If you look at Q2, you would go, okay, it's not quite panned out as we would have hoped. I think there was clearly a lot of pull into Q1, and I think by the time we get to perhaps the end of June, we may see that the first 6 months perhaps delivered what we expected. It was just all crammed into one quarter.
Ken, what do you think?
Well, it's a hot topic, isn't it? And it's we represent 13 different manufacturers, and there's probably 13 different ways of doing it that we see, from the fairly reasonable to the completely unreasonable, frankly. And I think the best manufacturers give us a target that's tough but achievable. The worst situation is where we're given a target that's just completely in dreamland and doesn't represent where the market is, and you just get turned off. 9 times out of 10, we're able to negotiate a sensible position, and then we all get on and do well. But sometimes you just can't, and sometimes it's just you've got to walk away and say thanks but no thanks.
Do you find something similar, Dom?
I do. I think we've seen a lot of manufacturers now already amend the targets for this month, which is very welcome. Some haven't, and they're still going to keep on pushing on, which is a bit worrying because they just can't be blinkered to that. But when you talk about the manufacturers' expectations, there's so many other things they expect us to do now. We're not just meant to sell cars, there's everything else, the customer experience, which we all agree with, but actually they want us to do it in so many different ways, which ends up us resourcing it with more and more staff, which puts more and more overheads, and just kills the bottom line. We've seen the overhead absorption just disappear in the industry. We used to be 80% was what the target was. Quite a few dealers were 100%, and I think the industry average is now about 58%, and this is a worrying trend.
that sort of leads me nicely on to what was going to be my next question for you, Will. Have the targets been realistic this year for you?
The target's been realistic. For one franchise is still very new to us, so we're finding a bit of a honeymoon period for that one, so it's not fair to discuss that one. One manufacturer put their target up by 10%, which for us, again, it's low volume, so yes, it's realistic. Another manufacturer, one that we're having issues with, just totally unrealistic, so we've just had to switch off and go down a used car focus. So that manufacturer then came back Q2 and reduced the target, so I think reality might have sunk in, which you've got to respect that they have adjusted the target on the back of that. So I'm content with the targets this year so far.
And Mark, the targets you've been given by manufacturers realistic this year?
I think every dealer would like a lower target on day one. I think probably in the spirit of a partnership, what we tend to do is to accept that target, go at it hard, do the right things, and then hope that if there is a shortfall, a sensible conversation can take place that reflects the effort that's gone in to trying to achieve a number.
Ken?
Well, I would echo that. You know, with most manufacturers, you go for it, you do your level best, and if you've got the right sort of relationship, you can normally come to an agreement towards the end of the quarter. Not all manufacturers are quite that mature, and some of them are give you a big target and you know that it's do or die, and you've got to make the decision whether you go for it or not. And some of the targeting at the moment is just unrealistic.
Tom?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ken. It's very, very difficult. You've got some market players where their market share nationally might be 3%, but locally the dealer's doing 9%, yet the manufacturer wants them to do that much more again next year. And it's just ridiculous. It just can't be done. I mean, these guys are pushing every single channel they can, yet the manufacturer still wants more. And all we're ending up seeing is the margins getting squeezed and squeezed, and actually that's affecting the whole industry because we're all having to discount heavier and heavier just to try and get the numbers up. And again, it's a very harmful way of doing the business. If we can be a bit more mature about it with our manufacturer partners, and some manufacturers are, you can come to a sort of a happy medium, and that's fine. But some manufacturers just keep pushing on relentless, and second is for losers as far as they're concerned.
Before we carry on with our questions, is there anyone in the audience that wants to ask anything? No?
So is pre-reg still as much of a problem as it always has been?
Again, for us, due to our volume, one franchise, we find every quarter we're doing 2 or 3 at the end of a quarter. The other 2 manufacturers, to be fair, touch wood, we're not having to, personally. You see it in the news all the time, but as I say, we've got to make our decision on the first day of the quarter. Are we going for the target? If the target's realistic, yeah, we'll make it happen. If the target's unrealistic, we just got to switch to used and forget about it for the rest of the quarter. So for us personally, not really, no.
Mark?
It's a tough question. I think what we tend to do is we look at each proposition on its own merits. Can we digest those units quickly and liquidate them fast? Also recognising that the potential buyer of that unit actually could be in the showroom buying a new one. And it's weighing up the risk versus the reward. There have been instances where we've said, no, that doesn't work for us. And there have been many instances where we say, yes, that does work for us. We can digest that in our market. So we do take a pragmatic view on each opportunity that presents itself.
So in your mind, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity?
I think if managed correctly, it can be an opportunity. I think in an ideal world, we wouldn't be doing any of that because wait for that buyer to buy the new unit next month in the showroom. But we recognise that collectively we've all got some volume objectives to hit, and this is a route to market that's been there for a long time now, and I don't see it disappearing.
Ken?
I would prefer to talk about self-registrations rather than pre-reg. Subtle but important difference. It's never a problem if it's the right stock with the right money behind it and not too much of it. So in a controlled environment, not an issue. The problem is if you end up registering the wrong stock and you don't have the money behind it, they can be difficult to move on, and a business can get swamped by them. We've been doing self-registrations for a long time. We know what to do, what not to do. We've probably got a little more than we had last year, but we're getting through them, so not too much of a concern.
Tom?
Yeah, I've never really liked pre-reg. I think it's quite dangerous for the business, especially when you're a small family business. I've always likened pre-reg to kind of drugs. If you're so inclined, you can kind of get away with it, play with it once in a while, but after a serious amount of time, it'll do some serious damage. And I just think it's a bad, again, it's just hitting the bottom line. The manufacturers now take it as another channel to market. We've got new, we've got used, and we've got pre-reg. And I just don't think it's the right way to go. But the manufacturers have the numbers to hit, and they just keep pushing them out. And if the bonuses are big enough, of course, and we're not hitting targets, we're going to dabble.
So are any of you planning to start selling cars online in like a complete process? Shall I jump in the middle this time and go for Mark?
Sorry?
I was going to jump in the middle and start with Mark this time.
I think it's a channel that is getting serious consideration within our team. We're watching carefully what others are doing. Virtue launched something last week, albeit very softly. I kind of like the way they're going about doing it, not with a big bang. I think that's sensible. But I think we need to find a way of being able to be really easy and frictionless to deal with. And there is strong evidence that suggests that end-to-end selling online is a channel that will drive some volume. So it is high on the consideration list.
What about you, Ken?
We prefer to actually meet our customers because we feel that you can, traditional motor trading, you can do a better deal in that sort of way. But inevitably it's coming, isn't it? And it's just a question of when. Interesting to hear what Virtue are doing. I'll have to go and have a look. But I suspect we will get there, but who knows when. It's not something I'm going to push the envelope on. But if our competitors are doing it, we'll have to follow suit.
Yeah, I've actually worked on a click-to-buy team with Hendy as a dealer representative, and it's been quite an interesting project. It's here to stay. We need to get ready for it. The problem at the moment is I think the customers aren't quite ready for it yet, so they're getting to the stage where do you want to buy online or do you want to print out the deal? And they end up printing out the deal and coming to the dealership and ratifying the decision. But I think once that customer then comes to buy their second car, there's every chance they're going to come back and buy it. The problem it's causing, though, will be that actually how do you price these cars? And they end up being handling fees on everything. So probably within 8-9 years' time, we could be on handling fees for every single car. So the important thing for us at the moment now is when our manufacturer partners are deciding to go online to sell cars, that we actually secure the right sort of handling fee. Because if we're on to sort of £300-400 handling fees, the business model doesn't stack up.
What about you, Will?
I like the idea of online buying. One of our manufacturers has explained that they're going live with it later this year and the way it's going to work, and I think they've got it spot on. I can see why it would work. I don't think there'll be massive volumes to begin with. I think you've got to ask yourself, would you buy a car online? And what's the closest thing I've done similar? Recently we went to buy some new furniture, and I was reluctant to spend a lot of money on furniture until I'd touched it and felt it. So I think it'll continue with consumers wanting to still test drive, see the cars, touch the cars, but then come back and buy online. So as long as the model's set up right and the margins are realistic, as Dom says, I can't see it being an issue, and I actually look forward to it. It's something new and exciting for us all.
There's been a lot of talk in the press recently about a diesel scrappage scheme. Would you guys support one, and if it was launched, what would you like it to look like? Dom?
Well, thanks for that. I think there's a place for it. I think the public just think diesel are bad everywhere, and the worrying thing will be if you put a diesel scrappage out there, everyone's perception is going to be that diesels are just no good, and it'll just kill the market. And Euro 6 cars are fine. What incentives they'll put in place, I don't know. But I mean, the last one, the VAT man did very nicely out of it. So it actually didn't really cost the government hardly anything. The manufacturers had to put a lot of money in to make it work. And the problem is with the currency markets, although it's softened now, the way it is, we haven't got the margins necessarily to put £1,000 into every single car. And we're seeing a lot of petrol cars now, obviously being very, very low emissions. We've got hybrids coming through, even hydrogen coming through now. So I suppose it will give exposure to these new fuel cell cars.
Ken?
Well, a diesel scrappage scheme would give the industry a short-term boost, which would be nice. But I am concerned about the effect of what people think about diesels. And unless it was done properly, essentially, I think it would be the end of the road for selling diesels in volumes. And our manufacturer partners are geared up to be selling diesels, so I can't see them being supportive of a diesel scrappage. I also heard figures bandied around of the cost to do it properly of 6 billion. I can't see the government supporting that. So it sounds like it's a nice idea, but from what I hear, it's probably drifting away at the moment.
Interesting, Mark. Heard similar things?
Yeah, I think it would be a really welcome stimulant to the new car market. I think there's a lot of propaganda. There's some really clean diesel engines out there. We have seen demand for petrol increase in the showroom on new car. What we haven't had is the mix of new stock around us to reflect what people are currently asking for. And when you tell the story about kind of what, how clean a Euro 6 diesel engine is, consumers are still happy to buy a diesel. I think it will be very interesting to see how things pan out over the next 6 months. I hear things about a regional scheme that seems fraught with issues. Is it where the car is registered, or is it where the owner operates the car from? We're close to a city that has a real diesel issue due to ships in the port that are constantly churning their engines over. So it's going to be a really interesting one. I think we would all welcome a short-term stimulant. We also need to consider the long-term impact on the diesels that are out there in the vehicle park at the moment and what that means to them.
I welcome anything that will help us sell cars, obviously. But it's the media that worries me with the diesel scrappage scheme, because suddenly diesel seems this big naughty word in the motor industry. We rely heavily on selling, as we said, some clean diesels to make us a living. So I'd like to see something done on emissions as opposed to the word diesel. So anything with a really high emissions level, then that would qualify for a scheme. But if they're going to do one, great. If it helps us sell cars, even happier.
So are you guys worried about Brexit at all, or is there any way that you would like it to go when an agreement is reached? Start with Dom.
God, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be a multi-millionaire. We'd be able to know what to do with it. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't think anyone does, really. A lot of our industry basically relates around the currency markets, so it's lots of external influences for us. Obviously, the homegrown factories like Nissan and things like that, we actually can take advantage of being in the UK, but however 60-70% of those components to build those cars come from Europe anyway, so we're actually so reliant on the currency markets, and no one will put a stake in the ground and say what they think is going to happen with the currency market. Otherwise everyone will start hedge betting, as I guess some of the manufacturers probably are anyway, just gambling a bit, but it's very, very difficult to know what to do.
What about you, Ken? We actually sat here last year and asked you, and everyone on the panel said, nah, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, well, I was slightly shocked when it did happen, and I've got to say, when it did happen, I was worried. But, you sort of get used to these things, and there's one thing about the retail motor trade is that we're robust, and we get things thrown at us, and we generally just deal with it. Who knows how Brexit's going to pan out? I think we're in for some choppy water over the next couple of years, but we'll just do what we do. People will still need cars to drive. They'll still want to change those cars need servicing, so we just get on and look after our customers. That's all we can do.
Mark?
Kind of similar, really. I mean, I just think we are incredibly resourceful. We'll adapt really fast. Early indications are that we've seen no downturn in the new car market in Q1. That's really positive. There's a long way to go with this. But I think us and our manufacturer partners will adapt and find a way to keep the market where it is.
I'm going to probably make myself look like an idiot here, but I don't really get the whole politics thing. Every 5 minutes we seem to be having referendums, Brexits, elections. So I kind of think, well, forget about it, don't worry about it, but worry about the stuff you can concentrate on and affect. And what I mean by that, recently when I got our guys together, I said, let's concentrate on our customer journey. e.g. how well are you found on Google? How well can you park at our dealership? How good's the coffee in our dealership? How nice are our staff to the customers? So I've tried to just block it all off, to be honest, and just concentrate on making sure that the customers that do come to us are looked after as best possible, and we can forget about the whole Brexit.
Okay, just a quick one to finish on. If you're a betting man, where would you put the volume of car sales this year? And looking forward in 2018, how do you think car sales are going to fare then too? Dom?
Me first. I think it'll probably not as buoyant as last year. I reckon we're probably going to see continue a bit of a slowdown. I think it's going to possibly bounce back probably next quarter. I think some dealers who are really in the doldrums will miss out this quarter. So they'll just elect to not hit targets this quarter and possibly roll everything into July, August, September. I mean, that's a big month, a big quarter for us in the industry. So I would expect, I'm not sure what the SMMT figures are saying at the moment, but I would imagine it's going to be probably around about 2.3, 2.4.
Ken?
Well, I see this as a more of a push equation. The manufacturers have built these cars, they're right-hand drive. If they're not built, they're the programs will be produced. So whatever the demand is from the public, those cars are going to be on the road. I think the market will probably be closer to 2.5 million this year.
Mark?
I think the market year on year at the end of this year will end up fairly level, which will mean there'll be a significant downturn in the remaining months. I think it will probably remain level next year. Beyond that, really difficult to see. Really difficult.
Will, how's your crystal ball looking?
I honestly think it'll come in very similar to last year's, my gut feeling. Obviously, March was very high, April was very low, so I think it's about 1% up year to date. And I think people will be cautious this year, and I think it'll just sort of tickle along, to be honest, is my gut feeling. Hopefully it'll increase, obviously, but I just cannot see why or how it can, personally.
Perfect. Well, that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. If we've got a shortish break now, we're going to be back at 1:15, which is when we're going to have a few of our Whitney panellists on the stage just to tell you about what's going to take place in Whitney later today. And we're going to be announcing our Woman of the Year. So see us in a bit.
Thanks very much, guys.